Well, welcome back into another edition of Get to Know the Royals right here on the Queen Sports Network. And I am joined today by our defending 2019 men's rugby champion, I should say, and head coach Frank McKinney. And Coach, thanks so much for joining us here on Get to Know the Royals. And I know you guys are just about to get set back into a condensed season, but at the same time, appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it just mentioned it, coming off that 2019 national championship, I got to say, let's go back to that 2 years ago. And, you guys were a bit of a dark horse going into that season, but the last one, I guess I should say, when all is said and done. Let's start from the end, though. Can you tell us a little bit what it felt like on that day to see kind of all that hard work come to fruition in such a pinnacle of a way?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was borderline overwhelming because when I first started, I had my players laugh about this, but I had a cube, I had a desk, and I had a dream. I didn't have any players. I didn't have any business cards. I didn't have anything. And one of the things that drove me is I had a meeting with Jeff Dugdale, who's a 10-time national champion, 5 on the women's side, 5 on the men's side. And I wrote a business plan, and my business plan was how I was going to get 15 players. And Jeff said, "Hey, take this back, and I want you to tell me when you're going to win a national championship." And I laughed and I said, "Yeah, Jeff, I don't think you understand. Like I don't have anything. Like I have nothing. I have a cube, I have a couple pens." But it was interesting though because when the final whistle blew, I dropped to my knees because everything just hit me. From starting from day one, and you have bumps in the road, recruiting battles, and each year the recruits we're able to go after are better and better. But that first year you had to sell people on a dream. Mm-hmm. So it was euphoric. There's a lot of different adjectives I can use to describe it, but it was just unbelievable.
I can't even imagine. And again, it's one of those things that, I've talked to other coaches about this. That's something that there are very few people in this world that will ever truly understand the true feeling and meaning of something like that. And you guys were special enough to be able to feel that. And I have to say, I watched the hype video that you guys had for the national championship. One of my favorite lines I think I've ever heard was when you said the best thing about disrespect is that it turns into respect. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of how you saw that come through your guys on that day and how they made that into a statement?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is that there's a couple publications, just like any sport, that goes out and they rank teams. Rankings had been a little rough. We came in third in our true first year in a conference, which was really 2 years in the making of the program. We were ranked. We had a play-in game to get into nationals. Mm-hmm. So 16 teams, and if you win the play-in game, you're either 15th or 16th. And going into that, we were ranked 30th in the country. And we had this incredible run where we made it to the Final Four, and we ended up losing to Wisconsin Whitewater. But we started off ranked 30th, and they kept moving us up. And then even after we lost in the semifinals, they didn't rank us third or fourth, which you would think that's where you get. They had us ranked 5th. They put another team in front of us. So, obviously, you can just take that as data, as ammunition, and you just remember that. So then the next year, we were still young. And that's one of the things I knew. We were still young. We only lost like 1 or 2 guys, and we reloaded. So the rankings kept coming out, and they were ranking us like 7th.
Gotta love that.
Yeah, they were. And, I just tell the players, hey, and we lost the game. And there were some abnormalities, in my opinion, in that game, but we lost. And one of the players, and our ranking dropped. And one of the players was like, "Hey, can you contact the rankings people to tell them?" I said, "Yeah, that's not the kind of program we're here. Yeah. We are talking on the field. We show all the hard work we put in. We don't need to tell anybody about it. We show them." So that's what we ended up doing. But yeah, I think my first year, we tried to get into a conference. A D2 conference, local D2 conference. I knew a lot of the guys that ran it, and they declined to give us entry into the conference. So what we had to do is we found another conference in Virginia, which in my opinion had stronger competition at the time. And we ended up in that conference, and that conference really was a huge blessing to us because the competition was really good. The organization was really good. the people were really good. And that really helped us to get better, hone our skills, and be able to make a run for a national championship.
Well, you did just that in 2019, and like you say, sometimes it's not a matter of where you finish, it's where you get your foot in the door. And again, you guys got your foot in the door, and the rest is history at this point. I think one of the things that sticks out to me about rugby is it's such a long season, and it's such a physical sport to play. How do you keep these guys healthy? How do you make them stay into it for that long of a season and just to remain in it physically?
Yoga.
I like that. All right.
Yeah, we so what we started doing is on Mondays after games, we started having yoga sessions. And I think the players thought, it's a little kooky. We're doing yoga. We have them upstairs in the that kind of that room up there. It's got and I bring a video. We're eventually going to end up getting a yoga instructor to come and teach. But they all get yoga mats, and they go and do yoga sessions. And they'll do that for half an hour, and then we'll do an hour of film. But it's really a chance to get them off the field, to recharge their batteries. It gives them a time to get their bodies healed up. The thing we have too is our athletic trainer, Kat, is phenomenal. She's absolutely positive phenomenal. She gets these guys back together. She sends us an injury report. And the injury report has 3 different statuses. Can't play, can play as tolerated, or completely a full go. So that lets myself and the coaching staff know where our players are at. But yeah, yoga, I think is I don't want to say a secret weapon, but I think it's definitely how we keep the guys, how we keep their bodies ready to go because when you're going from one game to the next game, I think it really helps them get ready for that next week.
Hey, listen, my wife tells me all the time, if ever I say I'm aching or if I have body pain, she always tells me to do yoga. So there's obviously, something to it there in terms of that. And, I also chalk it up to, you hear the stories about football players, and some of them growing up, there's coaches telling them to take ballet classes to make them more agile on their feet and stuff like that. So, again, it's whatever works and whatever keeps them healthy and physically ready to go throughout. And not to mention, it's not just a physical thing with yoga, it's a mental thing as well. Just kind of, helping them stay within themselves and stuff like that. So I love that. I'm glad that you guys end up doing that. So let's talk about your beginnings with this game. You graduated from Belmont Abbey, played there in the early 90s. What got you into the sport of rugby over something like football or something like that?
Mike, you're letting my age. You're letting people know my age.
I know. I didn't mean to date you. I'm sorry about that.
I'm totally joking.
Played as an early teenager at Belmont Abbey in the 90s.
So I grew up in a family where my parents were athletes, and my dad had me in baseball, and then he was in the Navy, so he would go out to sea at about 6 months at a time. So my mom signed me up for soccer. And I ended up becoming a really good soccer player and played in high school. And then when I got to college, I was supposed to be playing. I was supposed to be there playing soccer. And I came and I wasn't really in good shape. The soccer coach told me, hey, come back next semester when you're in shape. So I met these guys that played rugby, and they threw me the ball and I got to run with it. And they were teaching me how to pass. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So what I ended up doing is by the time I became a senior, I was the president and the captain of the team. That really got me going. And then from there I graduated and I went to Charlotte Men's Club, which was a team that was a local team, and played there. And they were a Division II team. And how men's leagues work now is that there's what's called an MLR, which is the Major League Rugby, which is the pro league. There's Division I, Division II, and Division III. So at the time, the team was a Division II team. And then we moved from Division II to Division I. And then we moved from Division I to Super League, which Super League was the top 16 teams in the country. Okay. So being in that training environment, being with players that were pushing to be starters, really got me going. I had a really good coach, and our coach made us give back to society, volunteer coaching hours, and he really pushed us. So being in that environment, being around those guys really got me motivated. But what got me into coaching was actually funny. He made us sign an agreement that we're going to volunteer a certain amount of hours with local teams that we were going to give back. And that's how I got into coaching.
Interesting. Hey, listen, sometimes you always need that little bit of a nudge, right? Into whatever direction you go. And, you talked about kind of that idea of community and stuff like that. Of course, that's a big thing, underlying thing at Queen's University as well. So I'm sure that was easy to kind of translate over in terms of coaching style into this new program. I guess that leads me to, what kind of lessons have you learned from the sport of rugby, whether it's playing or coaching? And then what do you think, or how do you think it helps you in terms of tutoring these young men? And of course, again, the sport of rugby played by young women as well. What do you think it teaches them?
Yeah, so it's interesting. One of the things I want to do with all players is teach them life lessons. I've said this before, and I stood up in front of 31 coaches and said the same thing. I didn't get into coaching to win games. I got into coaching to make young men better. I think anybody can win a game, but to teach life lessons to young men where they can go out and be good citizens, that to me is a lot better. I'd rather have all my players graduate than win a national championship. But I think one of the things that it starts with is being on time. That's really important because the life lessons is something that you have to take and do in life. So you'll see most of our players usually show up 15 minutes before start time, and they do what are called work-ons. Work-ons are the things that they are struggling with that they need to improve. Okay. So whether it's passing, to the right off your left hand, whether it's, whatever the skill is, they'll work on their work-ons. The other thing is to show up switched on. Another one is whenever we have a meeting, show up with a pen and a pad to be able to take notes. The other thing is, be humble. If we go out and we have a lopsided game, then we're humble. We're humble no matter what. Be gentlemen. You'll see our guys opening doors for anybody that, if they're coming in, and you see a lot of Queens athletes do that too.
Yeah.
They'll open doors and hold doors. We've had players go and help when, there's things that needed to be done around campus. A big one too is to give back. As a kid, my parents took me to what was called a lock-in. I grew up as a Catholic, and they had homeless that were staying overnight in church. And it was Friday night, and I told my parents, I want to go out. My parents were like, well, just come for a couple hours. And just if you're there for a couple hours, you can go out, right? Yeah. And go do what you're going to do. So I go in there and they're playing chess, and I love chess. I'm a huge chess player. So I started playing chess with one of the homeless guys, and I just was like, this is where I need to be. And I've taken that experience, and I've taken what my parents have taught me about giving back. And I sat down with one of my assistant coaches, Coach T, and Coach T is all about giving back too. Okay. So Coach T has really helped drive a lot of our activities we've had. Last year, we gave out turkeys. We went and delivered turkeys to less fortunate people. We made over, I want to say, 700 sandwiches, which were given to crisis ministry assistance ministry. Crisis, I think it's crisis ministry, but they gave the sandwiches out to the men's shelter. And then we went and worked the cancer. There was a cancer run that was downtown, so we went and volunteered for that too. So it's really big for me to make sure the players are giving back. And it's really important for me to make sure that they're able to do those things that we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a crucial thing. And of course, this world nowadays needs more of that in terms of the way people give back and just, really look at another human being as, their brother or sister, not just another person that's walking by them. And, it's nice to hear that these young men and women at Queens, not regardless of the sport, have these opportunities and they go in. But it's very refreshing to hear a coach, say that that's more important than winning games, is to make sure that these young men get life lessons and that they're ready to tackle the world when they go out there, because it's going to come at them whether they want to or not. And just a matter of making sure that they do. Let's talk a little bit more about your time with the Charlotte Rugby Club. I know you obviously remember the team, went on to coach as well. Was that where you got your head coaching start? And you mentioned it a minute ago. I'm assuming that's kind of what propelled you into saying, hey, this is what I want to do for a career.
Yeah, I started coaching because of Charlotte Rugby Club. I've never coached Charlotte Rugby Club. My first coaching stint was at Myers Park High School. Gotcha. And I showed up there, and they had 12 players, and you need 15 to field a 15s team. So as I started coaching, more players started coming out of the woodwork. And then fast forward, I think 3 years or 4 years later, we ended the season ranked 12th in the country, and we won a regional championship. One of the things that I look at a lot of my teams that I love and I'm very proud of is I look at the diversity on the teams. And I think a lot of times people think of diversity as just color of skin. It's also socioeconomics. It's also, do you have two parents in the household, one parent in the household? But having those players that are different work together, I think, is a big life lesson, because what it does is it teaches them they have to work with other people that are different than them. And it makes them give another person a chance to see, hey, is this person, are they good? Are they a good person, or are they not a good person? So that's one of the things I'm proud about. But yeah, Charlotte Rugby Club, I had a coach from Scotland by the name of David Hamilton. And just watching how organized he was and how meticulous he was, and how for him it was more about, the bigger picture was, giving back, being prepared, being humble. All those things were way more important than going out and winning. And what's funny is from what I've seen, coaches that just focus on winning, I usually think are not that successful. If you focus on the ingredients, that's what I always say is focus on the ingredients, right? If you have ingredients and you're making a cake, then the cake should come out really good. If you just focus on the cake and don't worry about how good the ingredients are, then the cake, you're usually going to have some issues with the cake.
I like that. It's a good analogy. I got to remember that one. But the nice thing, I think that for me, the thing I've always loved about sports is not just, again, sure, the competition is one thing, but I think one of the biggest things for sports in my mind, and I think in a lot of people's mind, is the fact that growing up, it helps teach you those life lessons, and it helps teach you how to be a better person. Whether you take those lessons or not, that's completely up to you. But in terms of having that ability and having a coaching staff, obviously, for this men's rugby team that does that has got to be huge for these young men as they go on in throughout the rest of their lives. I guess that brings me to my last question would be, what made you choose Queens? Why did you choose Queens University? What stands out to you most about being your time as a Royal?
Yeah, good question. So I was actually coaching a very competitive that was in town, and they were nationally ranked. They're nationally ranked even higher since I left. That's probably. But I was coaching a.
You started it.
And they got good coaches. They got a good program. I was coaching them, and it's funny. As I'm coaching, I had a disagreement with the guy who ran the program. And looking back, it was probably pretty small in the scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something to where we came to an impasse. And I was an unemployed coach. I ran all the all-star teams for the state of North Carolina for 4 years. I had come off of, a couple different successful coaching stints, and I was unemployed as a coach. And Katie Wurst, who's the women's coach, actually recommended myself and recommended another coach. And Sherry called me. And when she called me, she said, "Hey, we're thinking about starting rugby." And at the time, what I didn't realize is that starting a team is going to bring you about as close to death as your. I didn't realize that at the time. I was crazy. So I was like, we started having talks and we had interviews and then she made the offer to me, and it was on an Ash Wednesday. Almost 4 years ago. I want to say it was sometime in the beginning of March. So I'm ready to celebrate my 4-year anniversary. Awesome. But she made the offer to me, and then I came in, and then I quickly realized the wrestling coach at the time was an Olympian. The baseball coach at the time was a Cy Young Award winner. And I came in, and the wrestling coach handed me his book. And that's when I realized, as I started walking around, that there's a bunch of coaches that are really freaking, really good coaches.
Yeah.
But what happened to me is I started realizing that you learn a ton of lessons from being around, really good coaches. If you look, you can always learn something from these different coaches. So for me, it's been pretty exciting. And I always tell Sherry, I'm always fired up when I get on campus. I love being, in the middle of Myers Park. I love being at Queens. I love working for Sherry. I think the campus is beautiful, but I think the real jewel is all the coaches that we have. How good of a coaching staff we have. I mean, if you just walk around upstairs, the trophies, the championships, the postseason play, regionals. It's like it's just coach after coach. And I think if you don't do well for a season, I think you start feeling bad because you're seeing all these other teams. And it's just overachiever after overachiever after overachiever. So yeah, I love working at Queens, and I think that's, for me, the different coaches. That's the greatest thing in terms of athletics.
Well, obviously, I'm new to Queens myself, just about a week in here. But I said the same thing when my wife and I were walking around campus a couple of weeks ago. I was walking upstairs. I saw all that stuff where you take that turn around the corner and you just have all those trophies and all those plaques up, and I'm like, man, this is a very successful place to be. And like you said, coaches have been amazing. Yourself included, of course. Appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us here today. But I feel like it's one of those places that not just the administration staff, but the coaches try to make it feel like home, not just for their players, but for other coaches and just the staff in general. So, it's definitely a fantastic place to call home. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Coach, appreciate you joining us here today. And, of course, you guys have a season coming up, albeit a little bit condensed than what you're normally used to. But at the same time, best of luck this season. We'll try to talk to you throughout. We'll try to get a couple of rugby matches broadcasted on the Queen Sports Network as well. But, Coach, thanks again for joining us, and best of luck this year.
Thank you, Mike.
My pleasure. All right, folks, that'll do it for us. We'll be back here again on next time on Get to Know the Royals.